Welcome to the Freely Rooted Mama podcast. Where I am their mother, I make the choice. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Freely Rooted Mama podcast. Today I want to talk about brain health, and I know that I will go into the subject so much more on this podcast, but I had the honor of sitting in on an interview this week, and the person that we were interviewing talked about this crazy statistic regarding brain growth and our children of today. And so it's just topical on my mind. So I'm deciding to record an episode about it. But again, I'm sure we'll go into it more. I kind of want to start with the reason I get so fired up and passionate about this stuff is really because, and I don't know where the statistic came from. I'll go find it. But this generation of children, so our children, the children we're having right now, is the first generation that is not meant to outlive us as parents. And me just saying that sends me into tears because I cannot believe that we are living in a world right now where as parents, we have to consider the fact that we may outlive our own children, and mostly due to health reasons. This is why I'm so passionate about health. This is why I'm so passionate about kids' health, and why I'm maybe a little OCD and diligent when it comes to my child's health, because I do not want to outlive my children. I can't think of not being able to see them, but I do not want to outlive my children. And so nutrition, diet, toxicity, environmental exposures, mindset, all of these play such key roles in our health. And so it's why I'm so passionate about it. So the statistic that she was talking about, I can't remember the prelude of the conversation, but I quickly wrote it down so that I could remember it, that she was talking about. We were talking about the importance of nutrition for children today. And she was saying that brain growth is now being stunted because of a constant smothering of insulin. So I don't know how much you know about insulin, glucose, all those kind of things, but our diet today, like there's a very famous study out there that only like 12% of the population is metabolically flexible, which means that your body knows how to adapt to burning fat, burning sugar, stored glucose, only 12% of the population. Like that is scary. And so when we think about, okay, we're bringing children into this world and we only have 12% that are healthy, like what chances do those kids have? And so brain growth for children is being stunted because of the constant smothering of insulin. And the constant smothering of insulin, of course, is many things, but a big contributing factor to that is dietary, what they're eating. Of course, lack of exercise and movement comes into play here, hormones, sleep, all those play a role in helping control insulin, but diet is a huge part. And so she said in our teens that they're looking at right now, so this isn't even like my children, but teens, their hippocampi is super crucial in relationships, managing stress, recovering from setbacks, being able to adapt, learning, acquiring new skills, keeping memories, all of that. So it's a very important part of the brain. And when you have a smaller hippocampi, what she was talking about, what it means for you long-term in life is that you don't develop the ability to manage stress. You don't create the ability to learn new skills quickly. And you don't get the ability to be able to remember things as easy. So it's a huge impact, but the point of this is the hippocampi is important. All parts of the brain is important. The brain is super important. But the fact that parts of our brain are now becoming smaller due to the way we eat in this world is very concerning. Like you can go into the science, like I geek out on this stuff, but I don't always like remember everything perfectly. So, but I remember the way it makes me feel. And this makes me feel extremely concerned for our population. And it's hard because if you don't know this, they make foods to be addictive. So they put chemicals in foods that leave you wanting more and more and more, that don't make you feel satiated, that have dyes and chemicals and extra processed sugar and carbs that aren't healthy for your body, that your body has a hard time processing, and they leave the kids wanting more, and they're addictive, right? So it's concerning because if you're not diligently aware of it, you could be feeding your kids foods that are literally stunting their brain growth, which is really really concerning. And unfortunately, the food industry doesn't give a rat's ass about brain growth being stunted. They care about making money. If you look at like cereals and things like that, just go like if I could teach you one thing, like it's to learn how to read the ingredient list on anything. If there's a word you can't pronounce, if there is 12 ingredients into one simple thing, like you want the ingredients to be as short as possible. That thing should, if it sat on your shelf, should go bad in a couple of weeks. Like if it doesn't, then you need to start being concerned as to what is in it that's not letting it go bad. And then the fact that we're feeding our growing children these things, but they need really good nutrition support to help their body to grow, to help hormones to start kicking in, to help brain development, social cues, mental health, to help them sleep. I mean, how many sleep training programs are out there teaching parents how to get their kid to properly sleep, but they're probably not talking about nutrition? What are you feeding your kid for dinner? Are you giving them a snack full of sugar that's giving them this huge glucose spike at night? Of course, their body doesn't know what the heck to do with that. And then if you know anything about the brain, when we go into a sleep mode, is meant to detoxify and repair the body. But if you go to bed with a stomach full of food, your digestive system, like your brain is now going to send all blood flow, all control over to breaking down the food in your digestive system. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I'm just giving you an example of like, your kid won't go to sleep and we go into these sleep training programs, or you go put them under a study because they're not sleeping or they're not falling asleep, or you get mad because they're not falling asleep. But when did you feed them their last meal? Was it right before bed? So now their digestive system is trying to work and the brain can't fully shut down and go into a deep sleep. Did you give them a bunch of sugar? So now, melatonin's not being secreted and they're not ready for bed because their body is trying to process this influx of sugar. It's just things to start thinking about. And when we sleep, what we want to happen is we want the body to go into a heal and repair mode, especially for children, as maybe they get injured and they're trying to move and they've got all this growing that they're doing. You want them to be able to relax and go into a deep sleep. Also, when we go into a deep sleep, our brain detoxifies. It's the only time that our brain can kind of wash out and detoxify, which is really important for overall health. It's important for brain growth. And so if we're not allowing that to happen because of the way that we're treating our body during the day, there's some problems there. So the other thing to know too about like foods and chemicals, it doesn't directly respond to the hippocampi study that she was talking about, but it does go to brain health, is that, we have a blood-brain barrier, and that blood-brain barrier is open and unprotected, or like open to the brain through the ages of like 7. You don't really fully develop that blood-brain barrier till like 7. So chemicals, and those can be any kind of chemicals, whether they're in foods, whether they're in a shot, whether they're in beauty products, or I guess you're not usually giving your kid beauty products, but shampoos, conditioners, body lotions, ointments, diapers, all those things, they can seep into the body and they have direct access to the brain. And so it's not just this smothering of insulin that we need to be concerned about. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's everything. We need to look at everything with deep concern and making sure that we're reading the ingredients, reading labels, trying to give our kids as healthy of options as possible. And I know that's always easier said than done. I really do know that. I know that sometimes too, the healthier options are not always more affordable, but there's also so much that you can make on your own. So just start to think about those things, like anything that your kid is playing with, putting on their body, down to clothes. Like, I don't want to freak you out, but these all can go into the body and go straight up into the brain and be absorbed by the brain, which again is why that deep sleep, your kid getting deep sleep is so important, because the brain can wash out, and it can wash out some of those chemicals, and it can wash out and detoxify. So I know I kind of went off on a couple tangents, but it was just on my mind. And I watched so many kids today where I think it's just that we don't know. And it's hard to know all these things, right? Because the news isn't talking about it. It's not like the news is saying, hey, beware, Lucky Charms is destroying your kids' brain growth and stunting their hippocampi. News isn't talking about that. Like, you have to go do research and you have to go out and find this information, which is really overwhelming. I totally respect and understand that. Also, the point of why I'm doing this, again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an expert. I just have all this information that I've gotten to learn and sit in on. And yes, I have certifications and stuff, but I'm just passionate about let's help our kids outlive us. That's really what it comes down to. We have everything's on the rise, all kinds of chronic illnesses, diabetes, and especially kids' conditions, ADHD, ADD, autism, like they're all on the rise. I see so clearly that so much of it we have control over. We really, really do. But we have to make the conscious effort of doing something different. And the last note I'll end on this is that I often hear, well, my parents fed me Lucky Charms and I turned out normal. Or my parents did XYZ and I'm normal. And I want us to really look at what does normal mean? Because I before I learned all of this, I would say that too. I ate McDonald's all the time and look at me, I'm fine. Well, no, actually, I had to spend 6 years diligently working on my hormones, diligently understanding like why I had a candida overgrowth, really understanding why my gallbladder like had to be taken out. Why was I having painful migraines that like literally dropped me to the floor? Why was my hormone cycle never on a current cycle? But because so many of these symptoms, so many of us have, we deem it normal. It's not normal. Symptoms are not normal. They are an indicator that something is wrong. When you have to get a body part removed, it's an indicator that something's wrong. And nobody teaches you that, right? Nobody taught me why my gallbladder was dead and why it needed to be removed. They just said it needed to be removed. Okay, well, what was I doing in my lifestyle that led me to that? Was it my terrible eating habits? The fact that I was in college, probably drinking, not sleeping, not eating good foods? Like, nobody teaches you these things. We all deem them normal. And so then when we go to have our own children, we think, oh, well, I had symptoms, which is normal, and my kid's going to have symptoms, which is normal. It's not normal. It's not normal. And I will say, like when I talk to my grandparents sometimes, what was happening in the food industry when they were parenting is 100% different than what's happening today. The ingredients, the foods, a hamburger bun was made of, 30 years ago is not the same as what it's being made of today. And that's the same for everything. I mean, so much has changed. We have tried to cheapen processes. We have tried to cheapen the growth of food. We have tried to manufacture food and it's not working. And we know it's not working because all these diseases, all these chronic illnesses are on the rise. I'm sorry, but does the food industry stand to make any money if we do things differently? Like, they're not going to advocate that their Lucky Charms can cause issues. So anyways, I just want you to think about those kind of things, especially when it comes to the brain, ADHD, ADD, especially with boys. Think about like, could their food be impacting the way that they're behaving? Because 100% I've seen it in real life where food alters. It's just like when you give a kid an Otter Pop, they're like crazy. They're like the Tasmanian devil around your house. What is in the Otter Pop other than sugar and food dye? There's a chemical reaction happening in the brain. And yet kids aren't eating Otter Pops, but they're eating other things that have those same ingredients. And then we're sending them to school and then their teacher says they can't sit still. And so now we go put them on an ADD or an ADHD medication. If we just change their diet, could we prevent that from happening? Okay, I'll end my soapbox here today. But that was just something that was on my mind and I felt like I wanted to share. So hopefully something in there resonates with you. If you know somebody that's struggling with kids and brain development and things like that, please share this episode. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you wanting to hear more about. I just kind of will randomly talk about topics as they come up and as they spark interest for me or as they fire me up in some way. So hope this resonates with you somehow.